I would like to call to order the September 16, 2025 meeting of the West Palm Beach Planning Board. Madam Clerk, if you please call the roll.
Sam Fish.
Present.
Deborah Rain. Present. Peter Pivko.
Present.
Stephen Mayans.
Present.
Will Carante. Let the record reflect that Will Carante is not in attendance. Patrick Mayfield.
Present.
Jean Marcel Jr.
Present.
Next order of business is approval of the August 19, 2025 minutes. Has everyone had the opportunity to review it? And if so, any corrections, modifications? Otherwise, I'm looking for a motion for approval.
So move.
We have a motion?
I'll second.
Motion and second. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Next on the agenda is report of the planning staff. Ms. Aponte.
Good evening, Ana Maria Aponte, Development Services Director. I have two announcements today. The first one is Angela Jones has been promoted to the Assistant Development Services Director.
Boo.
She's not here. She is in a conference in Daytona, but she'll be back on Monday. She just took the position last week, I believe. So now the Planning and Zoning Administrator position is open, and we are hiring, hoping to get a good candidate to help us lead all the many things that we do in front of you for the approval of the processes. That's the first one. The second, I wanted to mention that since the last Planning Board meeting, the North Flagler overlay has been approved by the City Commission, and we're now in effect. That's all.
All right, thank you. Right, next on the agenda are remarks by the chairperson, of which I have none. That then leads us to the declaration of ex parte communications. And let me begin by saying, with respect to board case numbers 1445AA and 1445BB, I had a Zoom meeting with the applicant. I'll be making my decision this evening based solely upon the evidence presented tonight. As to all other matters, I have had no ex parte communications. I received no written communications. I have conducted no investigations. I have made no site visits. I received no expert opinions. I request that these disclosures and all written communications be made a part of the record. Does anyone have anything else to disclose? And Jean, let me start with you on this side.
In regards to Planning Board case number 1445AA and 1445BB, I did have a Zoom call with the applicant. My decisions today will be based solely on the evidence presented. As to all other matters, I have not had any ex parte communications. I have not received written communications. I have not conducted an investigation. I have not made a site visit. I have not received expert opinions. I request that these disclosures and all written communications be made part of the record.
With respect to Planning Board case 1445AA and 1445BB, I did also take part in a Zoom call with the applicant. Of course, my decision this evening will be based upon the testimony presented. With respect to all other items, I have not had ex parte communications. I have not received written communications. I have not conducted investigation. I have not made a site visit, and I have not received expert opinions. I request that these disclosures and all written communications be made part of the record.
All right, let the record reflect that we have a new participant here. Will, if you could please respond to the ex parte communications.
As to the matter of Planning Board case 1445 AA and 145 BB, I have had a Zoom call with the applicant and their attorney. I have not received written communications. I have not conducted an investigation. I have not made a site visit, and I have not received expert opinions. My decision this evening will be based solely upon the evidence presented. I request that these disclosures and all written communications be made part of the record.
Thank you so much.
With regards to matters 1445AA and BB, I did have a discussion with the applicant, but my decisions will be based on the information presented here tonight. As to all other matters, I have not had any ex parte communications. I have not received written communications or conducted an investigation. Nor have I made a site visit, nor have I not received expert opinions, and I request that these disclosures, no written communications, be made part of the record.
Thank you. Deborah.
As it relates to the agenda items this evening regarding Planning Board Case 1445AA and 1445BB, I was not able to meet with that Zoom meeting. I have not had ex parte communications. I have not received written communications. I have not conducted an investigation. I have not made a site visit, and I have not received expert opinions. And I requested these disclosures and all written communications be made part of the record.
Thank you. Sam.
As to Planning Board Case 1445AA and 1445BB, I did have a Zoom call with the applicant. My decision this evening will be solely based upon evidence presented. As to all other matters on the agenda, I have not had any ex parte communications. I have not received written communications. I have not conducted an investigation. I have not made any state visits. I have not received any expert opinions. I request that these disclosures and all written communication be made part of the record.
Thank you. That then brings us to the swearing in of speakers. Would everyone who wishes to speak or offer testimony this evening please stand up and raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this proceeding will be truthful? Yes. Thank you. You may be seated. Next on our agenda are continued cases, of which there are none. That then brings us to Planning Board case numbers 1444AA and 1445BB. Mr. Roach, Mr. Seymour, who's going first?
Good evening. For the record, Brian Seymour with Gunster Law Firm on behalf of the applicant. I'm going to do some quick introductions. Most of our team, I think you know, Carlos Viduera with the Huizenga Group and members of the Huizenga family are here with us as well. We have as well Victor Balacetas, who's, I'm going to try to do that like I know how to say it, but he'll correct me later. With Integra, who is our development partner in the deal. Andrew Warner with KPF, the architect on the project. Jeff Sider from EDSA. Mike Spruce, who asked like not introduce him, but he's here, so I have no choice. From Kimley Horn, who's the civil engineer. Chris Hagan from Kimley Horn, who's our traffic engineer. And soon to be heard from my trusty brain that I take with me everywhere, John Roach, who is an AICP certified planner with my law firm. So what we have for you tonight is a revisioning of the Marina CMPD, the commercial marina plan development on approximately 19 acres, located on the east side of North Flagler Drive, roughly between 38th and 44th Streets. Across from the southern, about half of it is Northborough Elementary School. And then as you go north, you see some of the single-family homes and the Northwood Garden District in that area. Right now, the project includes a couple of different elements. Primarily, it is the Safe Harbor Marina. It is formerly the Rybovich Marina, currently operated by Safe Harbor, which is the slips with the boats in the slips, which are proposed to stay, as you'll see, with an upland marine industrial use on the property that has been there for a very long time. On the north end of that property is the first piece of the development. So the property we're going to show you doesn't change Icon Marina Village that was approved, but it is part of this and is the transition, as John will talk about, to the north. And so those buildings are part of this project. That is a 399 rental unit project in 2 towers with parking garage that's on the front there. This is a commercial lease future land use designation with a CMPD commercial marine plan development zoning. It is the only property in the city with that zoning. This is a very unique piece of property. In fact, I would suggest you're not going to find a 19-acre private property with waterfront that you see here today. This project was originally approved back in 2014. John is tired of hearing me say this, but when we did this approval, we didn't even have PowerPoint.
We
I
only had
stood up here.
we only had sailboats then.
We had sailboats, but not only sailboats. And we had easels up here with boards. That's how long ago it was. Those of you who've been around a long time know what I'm talking about. This provided for a phased development of the property. It included a master plan with identified what are called permissible building areas, design guidelines as to how things would get done for setbacks, building heights, parking requirements, et cetera. And ultimate redevelopment with the marina to stay, but some redevelopment with some residential and marina-oriented uses. There were very limited commercial retail uses that were included. As we're going to discuss a little bit more, there was a piece of the waterfront that was considered at the time really more of a walking path called a promenade. Really didn't activate, didn't have anything to it, but there was at that point more of a focus on Flagler, the vehicular use. 2014, we were in a very different time, obviously. And then it did call for each individual PBA, which will remain, to come with a specific site plan architecture to come back for approval both to this board and then ultimately to the City Commission. That occurred for Icon Marina Village, which was approved in 2016. It was then modified some in 2018 and ultimately was completed in the 23-24 timeframe. So since then, we all know that lots has happened. 2014 was a long time ago, and this city has changed pretty dramatically in a lot of ways, particularly as you see the waterfront of the city, both north and south of downtown. Since that original approval, we've got a 12.5% population growth in the city. That was between 2019 and 2024. And the property values in the city have skyrocketed, as it appears, that we've more than doubled since 2015 and a 45% increase just in the last 4 years since 2021. And this creates some unique opportunities for this property, right? We have interest, we have opportunity to really capture something and do something truly special with the property. The north end is not saved from the change and the growth. You all have been here to see almost, if not all of it. Some of you have been here for as long ago as 2014. We won't talk about who has that gray hair. The rest of it, you've been here. It's been in the last few years. You've seen CMUD, the CMUD South expansion. You've seen a number of the things that have happened north with Apogee, Alba, 5400 that you recommended approval on last month, I think. And obviously, some other things that are happening through NMUD and BMUD. And so you've got some different things that are happening in Northwood, in Curry, and certainly on Broadway to start really bringing things together in the area that we're talking about. And then, of course, recently, the Northwood Gardens neighborhood redevelopment plans that GL is working on has also started through its process. Because of all this, while there's interest in the redevelopment that could occur, we could go build what's there. The Huizenga family decided they wanted to think about where we're at as a city now, what does it mean, and how do we make things happen? And so they looked at this as an opportunity, the time we're in, to update and enhance the original vision that didn't just serve the yachting community, but really serve the neighborhood and how they can engage in the neighborhood. The waterfront was a big deal. As I said, right, they have the promenade, which was just a north-south walking path. And is there a way that doesn't really draw people into the site, doesn't do anything for the neighborhood? Can we do something with that? Limited options in the current plan. There's no placemaking. There's really no community element to it. And so the Huizengas decided what they wanted to do is create a little design competition and say, who can really create something special here, looking at this with what's there and what can be tweaked and changed. We are not looking, and you'll hear this a lot, we're not looking to add a single unit, and we're not looking to add a single bit of square footage. What we're doing is moving some things around, and that was part of the key elements of what we're doing. But when that design competition happened, what occurs was that we learn a lot, because as the people are looking at this saying, here's where the city is today, there were some things that were noted. All of the respondents talked about the need to maximize the promenade. How can we actually activate it, draw people in, and create a little bit of a magnet for the neighborhood, so you don't just keep people walking on Flagler, but you really want them to be comfortable on Flagler and then come into the property and really utilize some of that waterfront. And you'll see how some of that is going to work. Obviously, we still have the yacht cruise, marina staff. That's all part of it. They're going to be part of this as well. Those boat slips will remain. The industrial uses get shifted a little bit north off of this property, obviously, as we develop. That was always the intent, but now we've really got the opportunity to take the next step with that. And really, there was a lot of talk about the fact that this is a rare piece of property. Having the scale of linear feet, depth, waterfront, on 19 acres really provided some good opportunities. And then they talked about creating a pedestrian-friendly, comfortable walking place along Flagler to really bring that in. And then again, bring those folks to the waterfront and utilize that waterfront and not prioritize just the vehicular issues that we looked at a lot in 2014 because people move very differently today. In fact, Uber didn't exist, right? And Lyft didn't exist. Micromobility wasn't a thing. You might have a bike, but there were no bike shares. There were no scooters. Things like that didn't exist. So we looked at how we could do that. And so we've created an updated and enhanced vision for this, working with the design team. And ultimately what we're presenting is modifications to the master plan and the design guidelines, which John's going to walk through. You can see that a lot of what's here, John's going to talk about, so I'm not going to read the slide to you. But we really tried to create something unique and special that really utilizes the entirety of the property. And that's important because this is a puzzle that got put together. And as that puzzle got put together, things moved up, moved down, moved around, in, out, and really said, how do we create this vision with this puzzle and put it together? And I think what you're going to see tonight, you'll be very pleased with, and it is a unique and special opportunity here. So with that, we also have our first site plan, which is the Level 3 site plan review, which is the second case that you are going to vote on tonight, that will allow the beginning of that advanced vision to be carried out. And with that, I'd like to give John the opportunity to walk through the details of the revised plans.
Thank you, Brian. For the record, John Roach, planner for the law firm of Gunster. The first item I want to go through, the previous slide was an outline. We're going to go through each one of those in a little more detail. As part of this reimagination and enhanced vision within the CMPD that was originally approved in 2014, the first thing that the design team looked at was the mix of uses that was originally established within the development. And so on here, there's a lot of numbers. You see what was approved versus what's proposed. But in summary, what it was is looking at how we could change some of the components that were originally approved, specifically things like the marine industrial that was proposed to continue onto the property somewhat, and completely remove that from the site and start to add in some of those commercial and retail uses that would draw activity to the site and bring people in from those surrounding neighborhoods. So you can see that the marine industrial is completely eliminated, which I want to clarify. I believe there was a mistake in the staff report that said that marine industrial in their tables said that it was staying as is with 45,000. We're actually completely eliminating that square footage. And then we're adding in square footage into those retail and commercial uses, again, to increase the activity and bring people into the site and along the waterfront. The one key takeaway here is that, as Brian indicated, there is no increase in the maximum number of units. We are staying at the 1,059 units that was originally approved, and we are not changing the overall gross square footage that was originally approved at 2.6 million. So it's a complete reallocation and reconfiguration of those uses, adding in some new ones, taking out some old ones, but no increase in overall square footage or number of units. The next part to the modifications was amending the master plan. The master plan, often referred to as a bubble diagram, ours necessarily isn't bubbles. But we looked at where those permissible building areas that Brian was referencing are located, how they're sized, what's remaining in terms of unbuilt square footage and unbuilt units, and how we could tweak that to fit that remaining development, but also implement those components, the activation of the promenade, the revision of the Flagler Drive corridor, and so forth. So what you see here is the areas that are in green are being added to a permissible building area. The areas in bright blue are being removed from a permissible building area, and then the dark blue is to remain as is. The first one, the major one, is along Flagler Drive, and I'll show some pictures here in a little bit, but one of the key components of the 2014 approval was the provision of a frontage road or a slip street or secondary roadway off of Flagler. It was running parallel from the north to the south along the entire frontage. Ended up dominating the frontage with vehicular use, in essence. And again, I'll show a picture here in a second. So the thought as part of this activation of the promenade, as Brian described in the results of the design study and the competition, activation of the promenade converted Flagler Drive into that pedestrian, walkable, and connectivity component. So by expanding the PBAs a little bit closer to Flagler Drive, reducing the setback a little bit, that also actually allowed us to lower the heights of the parking garages, allow them to step back from the frontage as they get taller, and create that sense of space. And we'll show some renderings of what that pedestrian component looks like along Flagler. So that's one of the major changes. The other one is by creating this destination in which people come to the property and, you know, it's a single destination. They park their car if they're arriving by vehicle. Otherwise, they're arriving by alternative modes of transit. But in essence, it's a single destination that once you're on the property, then you utilize the pathways and the corridors to walk from one place to the other. To do that, we needed to relook at how vehicles are parked on the property. And so we created these isolated or segregated parking areas for residents and guests versus public spaces. That way people aren't wandering across the property looking for places to park. They have their designated locations. To do that, we had to create some resident and guest entries into the residential parking garages. Entry C and entry E here are new, so those are kind of the notches out. And I'll talk a little bit about the configuration of one of those in just a second. This is the massing diagram that was approved as part of the 2014 development order. And you can see here, it set out the PBAs, set out the heights, the square footages, and general configurations. The things that I want to point out on this is the Flagler Drive frontage. You can see here the frontage road pretty much occupying the entire space across the property between the buildings and the street. Really providing for vehicular traffic within there as opposed to pedestrian traffic. And so that was the primary thing that we wanted to remove from it, as well as activation of the promenade. This did have a promenade that extended across the entire east side of the property from north to south. It was implemented as part of ICON, but it's just a walkway. There's really nothing bringing people into that space. There's no activation of it. There's no commercial businesses. There's no reason for anyone to be back there unless they have, you know, unless they live there or unless they're just walking in general. So there's no draw. This master plan did have some commercial activity, and this comes into where we were talking about the increasing some of the square footage of commercial uses. It did have a little commercial node here at the main roadway off of 40th Street within PBAs 9 and 11. But it did not transition into the promenade. It was just kind of a little node of activity, and that was about it. So very limited in terms of that activation. As Brian indicated, with the first phase of the development complete with ICON, you learn things, and things have changed since 2014, the original approval. With the construction of ICON and the frontage road as it was originally envisioned, and I think everyone can agree that the concept was a great idea at that point. However, when it went into implementation and you really see what's happening after completion of construction, what you ended up with was really a walkway along Flagler Drive sandwiched between two roadways. So this space really became about vehicles more than it did pedestrians. And that's what we want to change with this reimagination or enhancement of the vision. And then when you start adding in the landscaping, the layers of landscaping as part of that, it really separated the project from the frontage. So there was very limited interaction between the public walkway along Flagler Drive and what was happening internal to the property. This was, I believe, about a year after the project was completed, so the landscaping has even grown up substantially since then. This is, in the upper left-hand corner, is the cross-section that is in the current design guidelines for that frontage road. And you can see here, you know, it had varied widths, but the concept in general was that in front of the buildings, you had at least 24 feet dedicated to vehicular movement. There was less emphasis on the pedestrian aspect with a minimal walkway, 8 to 11 feet approximately, and then a couple layers of landscaping. We want to change that perspective. We want to remove the vehicle out of that space, utilize that separation between the building and the property line to create that environment for pedestrians. So while the building does get moved a little bit closer, again, the height of the garages can come down as a result of that. And we can also stair step the height as you proceed back to add in the layers of landscaping. But between that building and the property line and the curb of Flagler Drive is all about making a pedestrian environment, creating a microclimate, creating a comfort level that pedestrians are willing and wanting to be within and can move from one place to the other within the site as well as to the surrounding neighborhoods. So you see here a substantial amount of landscaping, not only in front of the building, but as on tops of the various stair steps of the building. You have a substantial walkway, at least 11 feet in width. It's actually wider in many places. We also have the introduction of the public art, the fountains. We have seating areas. We all want to create this environment with each of these elements. Again, an environment that is comfortable for pedestrians to be in, removing the vehicle out of that space. What does that look like? This is a rendering of that same cross-section. You can see here the shade trees along Flagler Drive overshadowing the multi-purpose path, the widening of the space to create the seating areas, the public art spaces, and that's the substantial amount of landscaping to create that microclimate that pedestrians are comfortable within. This is another cross-section, similar. It's a little further north than the previous one. This is at the main entrance off of 40th Street, the signalized intersection. The school is off to the left on the other side of Flagler Drive here. You can see at the main entrance, we've pulled the buildings back a little bit to create that sense of openness and inviting into that main component of the project. But again, the seating areas, the landscaping, the water fountains, all about creating that comfort level for pedestrians. We know with this project and other projects, there's always this discussion about activating or putting active uses along those areas. Again, as Brian talked about, we really want to focus the activity on the promenade. That's where we want to draw people to. That's where we want people to congregate, visit those commercial retail establishments. While some active use can be seen in other developments on North Flagler, like you see here on the top two pictures, it's our position that these really don't necessarily bring activity to the corridor. You know, they don't activate the frontage. While they provide for a little different architecture, they don't necessarily bring people into that space. And I would say that you can see in those pictures that the comfort level for a pedestrian in front of some of these is not nearly as enjoyable as what we are proposing with our various levels of landscaping, the substantial width of the path, and things like that. I talked about the separation of the traffic, and we do have one waiver as part of this request. This is a segment of the site. On the right-hand side here, you see 40th Street. That's the main signalized intersection. Just to the north of that is one of those resident guest ingress and egress points. As part of this, we identified that it was best to separate the inbound traffic from the outbound traffic and to have two separate driveways as part of that. From the city's code perspective, they treat that as one access point. You know, there's an inbound and an outbound, even though they're separated. However, they do still subject it to the driveway separation requirement, which is 125 feet. We originally had the design a little bit wider continued in a Y shape here, followed the angle of the building. So it actually had more width between those two driveways. But in working with the city to create some, to solve some issues with visibility triangles and the curvature of the roadway, we pulled the outbound traffic a little bit closer. So we're in essence kind of creating like a median here between these two, between the inbound and outbound traffic. That results in a separation between, or just under 27 feet. So we're requesting a waiver of just a little over 98 feet. There's no objection to our understanding. And again, this is working with the city's traffic engineer and the planning department to come to a reasonable solution given the curvature of the roadway and so forth. So, but it is just out of formality, it is a waiver that's being requested. So with the original master plan, and as part of that enhancement and revisioning, there's a certain amount of unbuilt square footage that remains after Icon Marina was completed. And so we looked at that unbuilt square footage and those number of units and looked at the remainder of the site and tried to identify what was the best way to orient those and to fit those within the property. One of those was to look at a reallocation of the building heights that were within that space or within that plan development. So on the left here, within each PBA, you have an approved that's under the current design guidelines versus what we are proposing. And you can see how some height is being removed from existing permissible building areas. Icon did not build to the full potential. And then additional height is being added to some permissible building areas. And then on the right-hand side is the reduction of the garages that I was referring to. So all those remaining garages are being reduced between 10 and 25 feet. So what does that mean in terms of massing and the three-dimensional perspective? This is just a very rough view study of if you take the existing master plan, the existing heights, that's where the 350s, so everything in gray that you see is under the current master plan. So the 349, but Icon did not go that high. 299, again, they only went to 248. The 350s, everything there in gray is under the current master plan. Everything in green is where we've taken that unbuilt height and reallocated it to some of the other permissible building areas. So you have the increases that are shown there. We think this perspective really shows that when you're talking about a building that can currently go 399 feet, that a little additional height on top of that is minimal when it comes to impact in terms of adjacent properties or surrounding neighborhoods. It's very negligible if you really look at it. But what does that mean? The previous image, nobody really sees the project from this perspective. What does that mean on pedestrian scale? We looked at, and these are very rough. We'll continue to refine these as we move through the process. But if you take a viewpoint of Broadway and 40th Street, standing at a pedestrian level, what is currently allowed, which is what's shown in gray, versus what we're proposing in terms of that reallocation of height, and that's what's shown in green. And so those additional floors, again, really become negligible in terms of that. Especially if you look at a street like 41st Street, where there's not a vacant piece of property immediately in front of you. When you start adding buildings and street trees and all those components of the neighborhoods to the west, that additional height even becomes more of a hidden element behind all of that. So as part of the reactivation or re-envisioning of the promenade, there were a couple changes. The promenade is still there. It's the pink line or the red line that you see running from north to south. The portion in front of or behind Icon Marina Village has been completed. Again, it's really just a walkway. It doesn't have any active use fronting onto it. We're not changing its location except for one area, which is around PBA number 7. Originally, PBA 7 was pulled off of the seawall and the promenade went around it. We are proposing to push PBA 7 to the edge of the seawall, provides for some waterfront dining, outdoor seating, things like that immediately adjacent to the water. But more importantly, it allows the promenade to continue in a straight line north to south into the central hub here that we are calling the Central Piazza. This is where the hub of activity is. This is where people are drawn into the main entrance off of 40th and Flagler, and this is where all that activity occurs and centers around, and then the promenade continues north and south from there. So again, modifying PBA 7 slightly, and then the Central Piazza really becomes this expanded element to the promenade. This is what that Central Piazza looks like. You really take that promenade and you expand it, you really create this unique and cool space that people are attracted to, especially when you start putting those active uses onto it. So what you see here is looking east towards the water. The tower that's in front of you is PBA 10, which is out on the peninsula. That PBA has ground floor restaurant space, which fronts out onto that Central Piazza. And then there is some vehicular component to this, but it's very minimal. At this point, you've gone past the entrances into the garage. So anyone that has arrived by vehicle has already entered into the parking garage, so they're not entering into this space. The only people who would actually be in here in a vehicle is if you're dropping off at a valet or if you're doing the rideshare pickup or drop off, then you would be into this roundabout. But otherwise, that space is completely dedicated to pedestrians. And the curbless design, provides for that free flow of pedestrian traffic. But again, you have the active uses that front onto that space, the restaurant at the bottom of PBA 10 that I was referring to. You got the office and club lobby space here. And then continuing to the left and right of this image along the water would be the continuation of the promenade, which is what this represents. So had I gone left off the screen on the previous slide, it would put me into this space. You can see the promenade has been widened. You have your marina, your yachts and your crew and everything like that occurring on the waterside portion of that promenade. And then the ground floor of the buildings is all those active uses. It's crew amenities, it's retail, it's restaurants, it's commercial space. All that happens along that promenade. So it really creates that central hub of activity. You see off to the left is the tower for PBA 10. The tower in the front that's kind of grayed out is not a part of, while it's a part of the master plan and the overall changes, it's not a part of the site plan approval that is before you. It's a future phase of development. So I'll better show that on a site plan here in a second. In addition to the master plan, we are also proposing to accommodate and to facilitate and go along with some of the modifications to the uses, changing some of our parking ratios that are provided in the design guidelines. Specifically, the first is with regards to, it was previously referenced as Beach Club. That's what Icon ended up implementing. We do have a club component, so we've switched that use name to semi-private club. We're changing the ratio of that, but we're also limiting the number of external memberships. So the concept being is that a majority of the members who would belong to that club are actually residents who live on the property. And therefore, they're already parked on site. They have their designated spaces. But to accommodate any external memberships, we do have a limited number of spaces that would be required. So we have the reduced parking requirement, but we have a limitation of 250 external memberships. The marine industrial, because that use is being eliminated from the PD, we're striking that out. And then the crew amenities, we reevaluated that the crews are arriving by yacht, they leave by yacht, they live on the yacht, so they don't have vehicles, so there's not necessarily the need to park them. So we struck through that as far as the required parking spaces. This last couple slides, this one is about the micro-mobility and alternative transit. A lot has changed since 2014, like Brian talked about. But we also like to think that 2014, they were actually pretty visionary in their thoughts of implementing some alternative transit components into the design guidelines. So what you see on the left are components that are existing within there and existing requirements in terms of electric charging stations, carpool spaces, bicycle parking, things like that. But there have been changes. Things have come about since that original approval. And so we're looking to implement a few other components as well. That being covered pickup and drop-off spaces are required at each lobby. So every residential building has those. And then a ride share and pickup drop-off location as part of the central promenade, which we have within the central piazza that I was referring to. And then also, if the city were to ever expand their bike share program, like they have Bright Bike, if it were to ever expand into the North End neighborhoods, that one of those facilities would be located on this site. So all those pretty renderings and images and discussions that were in the previous slides, this is the site plan that would be before you to implement that. Again, the tower that I was talking about is at the south end here, which we are identifying as a future phase. So all we're proposing at this point are these permissible building areas just south of Icon Marina, which you have your main entrance off of 40th Street coming into the central piazza space. You have PBA number 10, which is the residential tower here. There was a question before, and I can go back to the image of how do vehicles get to PBA 10 in terms of the parking garage. It's actually on an upper level. There's a bridge that connects the other residential parking garage to this one, so that there is no disruption of that pedestrian experience at ground level. So the promenade is completely free of that vehicular interruption. You have your private, semi-private club space here, and then another residential tower at the north end, immediately adjacent to Icon Marina. One thing we want to emphasize, you can see the stair stepping of the parking garages, allowing for that various levels of landscaping. And one thing that was a key component as part of this is that every rooftop of the garage is being utilized as either a green roof or active resident amenity. It is not open parking exposed to the sky. So we're really utilizing that for, again, resident activities, but also more importantly to introduce additional green elements into the project. And they're all connected by pedestrian walkways. So again, once you're parked there and once you're in your resident space, or once you're parked in the public parking garage, you can completely walk the property, from that point on. So that concludes my part. Brian, I don't know if you have anything you want to add. Otherwise, we're happy to answer, myself, Brian, or the rest of the team are happy to answer any questions.
Okay, any questions? Let's start with you.
1 second. John, a couple of things. What sort of signage are you allowed along Flagler to ensure that the people walking by really understand what's going on in the promenade?
And that we recognize that's going to be an important component to the project. Right now, we would be subject to all the regulations of the commercial marine zoning that are in place for the PD. So we would follow the city's standard code. However, it's a pretty strong aspect of that. We would probably be back with a master sign plan that outlines the various signage components and wayfinding that would be necessitated to accommodate this. But it is important, and I believe it's reflected in staff's conditions, which we agree, that identifying where the public park, where the residents' entrances are, all of those internal circulation within the parking garages are all going to need to be fine-tuned in terms of that wayfinding and signage. So we envision that there will be a master sign plan that comes back.
Okay, my last question deals with the waivers. Can you go back to that chart, the list of the waivers?
We had the one waiver about the driveway.
No. Don't you have other waivers?
No, the only waiver we had was as part of this modification.
Maybe it's the next application?
I'm sorry?
Maybe it's part of the next one?
No, the only waiver that we're asking for as part of this application, these two,
Right.
is the driveway separation. There were waivers that were granted previously
Yeah.
within the PD, and those are not to be changed.
Okay.
All right, thank you. Deborah, any questions? Sam?
No.
Get comfortable.
What's that?
I said get comfortable.
No, not today.
Off the mic.
So how is the transition handled from the current sidewalk to the new one? So the road around the icon stays as a horseshoe, right? So if you look at the northern end of the property.
In terms of what's the frontage roads that has been built today?
Yeah. How do
Okay,
the
let me-
two properties connect at that north end?
So you can see here, this frontage road continues and ties into an entrance and roadway that will exist and continue to exist along the south side. So here on the right, sorry, just trying to get the mouse. Here on the right side of the screen, there's a roadway here with some parking and things like that. The parking's not going to be there, but this roadway and main entrance will remain and continue all the way to the waterfront. That's actually providing some access to entrances into our garage and service space and things like that.
Okay.
And then that will be the dead end of the frontage road for Icon. It'll tie into that street here or that driveway, but then it will not continue to the south.
Okay. And then what mechanism is in place to get the traffic off of Flagler and into the property? Is it because you're going to have the two sides that's going to be open to go in, and then you have the residential that's going upward, right?
Yep.
And then you have the public access, which I assume stays downward towards parking.
Yeah, let me go to the site plan here. Let me get the slide number.
And is it because you're not at that traffic light that the vehicles will be able to flow more freely into the space, into the site?
Yeah, we completely reevaluated the traffic, and Chris Hagan from Kimley Horn can answer any detailed traffic questions. We reevaluated the traffic analysis with the removal of the frontage road because we knew that that changed how traffic was going to flow into and out of the property. So that was reevaluated and still came up that there is no additional impact from a traffic concern as a result of this change. In terms of how the site plan itself functions, you have the main entrance at 40th Street, which is the signalized intersection, right? Okay. That's where the corner is with the school. So you have a light here.
Okay.
That's where the public will enter into the site.
Okay.
And then there are entrances into parking garages on either side of that. If you were a valet or doing rideshare, you could continue into the central piazza and do the turnaround and then head back out, and then you would be exiting at that signalized intersection.
Okay.
The other entrances, we were able to provide enough stacking on our site before any security aspects that everything could be accommodated within the existing lane configuration of North Flagler, as well as our proposed driveway configurations.
Okay. Cool. Yeah, my only concern was traffic backing up onto Flagler, but it looks like you've got it addressed with the multiple driveways.
Yeah, by separating everything out, it really reduced that impact. And the main impact is at that signalized intersection. The resident guest locations or ingress egress, those are minimal amount of traffic.
Cool. I had a fourth question, but I can't read my own writing, so you're good. You're good.
Well, if you're able to decipher it, we're more than happy to answer later.
Patrick, any questions?
Sort of a follow-up question about the slip street. So there's no plans to pedestrianize the parallel component of that on North Flagler?
Well, I would beg to differ that we're removing the slip street so that we can pedestrianize the frontage along Flagler.
I'm talking about the existing one at the north side.
We're not, no, there is no proposed change. There's no changes proposed to the Icon portion.
Okay. So cars can still move.
Yeah, and actually, if you look off
north-south.
to the left here, that frontage road ties into this roadway or entrance at the far north end of this phase.
Got it. Okay, thanks.
Yeah, just for clarity, it basically will operate as it is. Right now, that's what's there. People would come in and go left.
Yeah.
So we keep that based on their design, how they've built out, and then tied back on the other side of the street to the new configuration.
Thank you. Any other questions, Pat? If not, Gene, any questions?
For PBA 9, your height restriction currently is 399 feet, is that correct? Is that what you can build by right?
I believe that's PBA 10, that's out on the peninsula.
Yeah, is that PBA 10?
Yeah,
Okay.
that one was established when the master plan was approved in 2014. That one was established at 399.
Okay. And the request is?
And that's what could be built today under that master plan.
Okay. And the difference to 4, is it 450?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions of the applicant? If not, may we hear from staff?
All right, good day, everyone. Jermaine Swaby, Plan and Zoning Senior Planner for the record. And staff would like to acknowledge that the plan development application does incentivize and encourage developments, and the applicant is utilizing it, and staff generally supports improvements within this area. So the applicant has provided much of the details, so I would go over some of the concerns that staff has. So the first is the removal of the frontage road requirement, which does reduce the setback. The second is the relocation of all active uses north of Flagler to the promenade. The third is the removal of the vista views at entry C. And the fourth is the increase in the permitted maximum height. And of those concerns, the two which were highlighted is 2 and 4, which were the main ones, which we'll go over in further details. So the original frontage design, as discussed by the applicant, included the frontage road, which is shown in red. So the minimum front setback for the garage was previously 50 feet, and the applicant has opted to redesign it, and therefore, with removing this requirement, they're reducing the setback to 25 feet, and which does increase the visual impact that is happening with the garage. So here is the image. The applicant pretty much explained much of it, of the impact will be the removal of the frontage road, and they have in the garage, which will be terraced and has vegetation with it. So with the previous design standards, it required a 25% active use for Flagler property frontage, and an additional 68 linear feet of art, fountain, or pedestrian-related features, or an active use which was required. So as mentioned by the applicant, they were proposing to remove all active uses from the frontage and place them along the promenade. I'd like to add that the present master plan does not prohibit the placement of active uses from being placed on both the promenade and the frontage road, so that's a notable. And staff notes that this change does not activate or enhance Flagler Drive. As you see in gray, it shows towards the frontage enclosed areas. And staff therefore added a condition that commercial uses, residential uses, or amenity uses for residential shall be provided along the Flagler Drive frontage between 40th to 42nd Street for the first 2 stories. And here shown in yellow, that is the area which does front residential areas. So the marina proposes 2 high-rise towers, and PBA 8, which is shown on the left, is 397 feet to the roof, with its highest point being 422 feet. And PBA 10 is 445 feet to the roof, and the highest point is 461 feet. So to go further into it, the image here shows the existing Icon Towers to the right, which are both 247 feet in height. And then you have the proposed Marina Towers to the left, which is for PBA 8 and 10. So as requested by the height for PBA 10 tower, you would have an increase in the maximum height of 47 feet from the previous 350 feet, which was approved. And for PBA 10, you would have an increase of 46 feet from the previous 399 feet, which was approved. And here we have the chart, which provides a comparison for the setbacks and height for the tower and garage when using the previous regulations, the proposed regulation, and also a comparison to the North Flagler Overlay District, which was previously approved. So the findings show that relative to the ratio of North Flagler Overlay District, using a 1-to-1 ratio, PBA 8 would need to be set back an additional 50 feet, while PBA 10 would meet the setbacks. Therefore, I'll provide further context with regards to the height request. So here, encircled in yellow, is the marina area. And when requesting height, a contextual image like this is usually referenced by the applicants. And it does show the 399 feet height, which was previously approved. And this is usually the case study that is requested, that is used for the requesting height. So here is an additional image that I used, which shows the downtown area. And for context, the tallest building within the downtown area is One West Palm, which is shown here at 439 feet in height. So if you compare the skyline, it would mean that the marina would be the tallest building in the city. Staff is of the view that the increased height does offset some hierarchy of the high-rise building, and which is created by the downtown area, and which downtown area usually provides the tallest height. A condition was therefore added where the maximum height permitted within the commercial marine plan development will remain at 399 feet as originally approved. Staff therefore finds that the request complies with the rezoning standards found in section 9432A, subject to the conditions provided in the staff report. And staff finds that the request does not comply with the site design quantitative development standards found in section 9435C for the harmonious and efficient organization, as well as consideration of future development standard. Also, staff finds that the request complies with the variance standards found in section 9438D6. Staff is therefore recommending approval of Planning Board case number 1445 AA with conditions contained. And staff is recommending denial of Planning Board case number 1445 BB. If the board moves to recommend the approval, staff recommends condition, which is contained in the staff report, which does give the approval based on the Planning Board and the City Commission. So also I provided a motion page on your desk, and that concludes it.
Okay, any questions of staff? Will, let me start with you. Patrick, any questions of staff?
Can you come back to me?
Okay, Jean?
Is it a mitigating factor at all for the city that it's PBA 10, correct, with the building height?
Both PBA 8 and 10 will be increased.
Okay.
Yeah.
But the one that's proposed to be the tallest in West Palm Beach, is there any consideration that it's on a peninsula as opposed to directly in line with the other buildings that make up the skyline?
Yes, staff does acknowledge that the tower is set back way further than the existing, as well as the previous approved design requirements. So it does, in fact, mitigate it to some extent.
Okay, so in their favor?
Yes.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Peter?
I have a question. What are the uses across the street from this particular site? I always wonder, well, we ask developers to put up retail, and they're the only ones within a 6-block radius of that whole space with very little pedestrian traffic, and ultimately, it's going to fail. So is this a conducive area to enforce retail along Flagler?
There are more than one factors, but contextual-wise, which was one of the questions that you asked, towards the most southern portion, south of 40th, is a school district, a school, and then towards the north, you have the residential areas, and then, as you know, on the site, the icon previously approved. The icon was previously approved with the front-end active uses, and then north of that, you have like the North Flagler Overlay District, which was previously approved.
Mr. Board Member, I think actually your answer to answer your question, ideally it should be residential. That's if you ask the staff what is our desired use along Flagler, it should be residential because on the west side of Flagler it is residential uses. So that is what it will be most appropriate. The residential uses. In terms of the general, we have opened it for commercial or other activities because just to offer some options to the developers, but the most appropriate context will be the residential uses. And in reality, if you are the residential property owner across the street, you would like to see a residential uses that is compatible with you instead of a parking garage. And despite the applicant is proposing a parking garage that is very well screened with the landscape that they are proposing, our vision is like, what if that, in addition to that landscape, could have some residential units in there? So that walk on Flagler could be actually more attractive and basically compatible with the residential uses on the west side and conducive to have more people walking along there and accessing the commercial promenade that they are proposing on the waterfront. So kind of that is kind of the vision of how we merge these high intense multifamily residential with the single family residential neighborhood on the west side.
Okay.
Any other questions?
No, well, after.
Okay. Deborah, any questions? Okay. Sam, any questions?
Can you pull the slide up that had the four, I guess the four variances being requested and the two that the city was okay with and the two that they weren't? It was like one of the first slides, I believe.
First slide.
But going off of the last question in terms of the active use along Flagler.
Okay.
There we go. Okay.
Yeah.
Kind of piggybacking on what was just said about the active uses. So, with the city's vision of having the active uses along Flagler, where would they envision also the parking be if your active uses along Flagler and the active uses are on the waterfront as terms of the apartments or the housing, where would parking go?
What we are suggesting is just linear uses. So it's the parking will be located in the same, let me see your slides. So if we have, just let me go to, where's the slide? 6. If you look at this, there's no mouse. So the idea is like right now they have these mechanical uses along the front. So imagine if instead of those mechanical uses, you could have some linear uses. And the parking will remain in the same location. Then they just have to find new location for the mechanical uses. Instead of being located along Flagler, you can have units facing Flagler Drive. So it has never the intention that the parking is going to go away. It's more like how do you line that parking structure to be more compatible with the residential uses across the street.
I mean, has there been, I'm assuming there's been a good amount of communication. Has there been a communication about that to see if there's other places for those, for the mechanical rooms and for the whatever is lining the street, or?
We have discussed with the applicant the staff intentional request. They have not just explored, I believe. I don't know if they have. They have never presented anything to staff to justify why they cannot accommodate it or how they could accommodate it.
Okay. And so based on, so the last slide, it said on the 4 items, so it's really the active uses along Flagler and then the building height. There we go. And the building height, those are the two main issues that staff has concerns with. The other two are acceptable in terms of the solution?
Yes.
Yeah? Okay. Okay.
Yes.
No more questions.
Okay.
Can you come back to me?
Yeah, so just to clarify, that the applicant testified that they did have, 300 and something feet allowable for Icon, but only built 248, correct?
Yeah.
So their logic of transferring that height to the other buildings is sound.
So that's not something that staff usually regulates, the transfer of the height.
But they did have the legal right to build that building at to what height instead of 247 feet?
So previously, 340. Yeah, I don't think.
The maximum height of 399 was approved for the PBA 10. That is the one on the peninsula.
No, I'm talking about the Icon.
The Icon was 350? 349.
And it was
one
built at-
tower, and the second one, 299.
Okay.
That's what they
and it was only
were
built
allowed.
at 247 and 248. Okay. Over the past year, there were some things being spoken about potentially, having private marinas on Flagler and, basically taking away citizens' access to enjoy the water, right? So I think developing a promenade that everybody gets to enjoy the water and the beautiful yachts that are over there would take precedent over having some sort of active use on Flagler. What's staff opinion about those two ideals
So,
against each other?
My understanding is that the promenade was integrated into the master plan, the design previously, and it wasn't designed to be a restrictive pathway. So it was always intended to be accessible to the public.
Right, but active use retail would make more sense along the promenade and enjoying the water than along Flagler.
We don't think the two are competing. We don't think you can have the two elements on the project. I think the way they are proposing the promenade is a very attractive and very interesting proposal. We don't think having active uses along or residential uses along Flagler is competing with that. I mean, if we look at this project, they have 1,059 units approved for the project. So if you use, 15
But
units.
the 1,059 units was approved in 2014,
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
So they were the very first applicant that planted the flag, and they just happened to be coming in for their approvals now versus after all of the other approvals that have happened along Flagler.
No, what they're doing is amending the original approval. That's why they are here. If they were doing what it was originally approved, then they will not have to come in front of you.
Correct, but it was still 1,059 units.
Yes, correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, that's not in question. They have that. Yes.
So I feel like I'm having deja vu from last month. And I'll ask the same question. Does the Flagler Overlay District apply on this application?
No, it does not.
Okay. I guess my other question would be, of these two items in front of us, which would staff indicate is more important to the city?
Have to answer the same question. I think I will answer the same way. I think the compatibility item between the residential neighborhood and the new development, from my perspective, is more important of how do we merge these two different type of development. At the end of the day, yes, 50 feet more, 50 feet less in a tower is not, I mean, we think is not ideal to have a tower that high on this location in terms of the entire skyline of the city. The highest and more intense uses and highest buildings should be located in the downtown. But if the city already, I mean, the 399 was already the tallest, so it was pretty tall. So if I have to pick and we can get something along Flagler Drive that is more compatible, I will go for that.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any other questions of staff? And if not, would the public wish to be heard? Anyone wish to be heard from the public? And if not, or you wish, please come forward. We need you to fill out a card, but you could do it after you speak.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak in front of the council. My name is Willa Porter. I live in the community directly adjacent to the area that we're proposing. Our community is called Flagler Landing Condominium Association. I am the president of the Homeowners Association board there. I appreciate the opportunity to address some things that I heard tonight, one of which was that most of you had not had the opportunity to actually visit the site. And that's what I wanted to speak to you first and foremost tonight, because I think that perspective of our 68 homeowners, we are the most densely populated area of homeowners directly adjacent to the proposed property. And our property border is literally 30 feet from building number 5, which would be, and directly across, we are a property that is an isthmus, just to give an awareness of why this is a concern I'll bring up in just a moment. Our property is 50%, I would say, the average home front along Flagler Drive, and 50% extends out into the water with water on 3 sides. So one of the things that I first wanted to address is to say we actually really appreciate Safe Harbor as a neighbor. We think they do a lot for our neighborhood. We appreciate the value that is added there, and we really welcome them as a positive in our neighborhood. So there's no animosity that we feel in general. We understand that they are an important partner for the city and for the growth of West Palm Beach, and we 100% support that. The concern that I have tonight on some of the specifics that I heard, with all due respect, one of the phrases was engage the neighborhood. So I'd like to speak for a moment about what the neighborhood actually is. Our neighborhood until 2014 was zoned for residential homes and a maximum of 4-story buildings. Our community is a 4-story building, as are most of the properties along that line. So it was sort of, that's the vibe, it's a lower profile. So when we got the passage of the 6 buildings, it was quite a shock to contemplate why the city felt that that was an appropriate thing to insert in the middle of an essentially low-profile neighborhood. Be that as it may, they've built Icon, and we've learned a lot in that time between what matters and what's the positive and what's the negative. One of the things that I'd like to say is I don't think we are engaging the neighborhood. With all due respect, there's been no communication between our community and any of this proposed development.
I'm so sorry, your time has expired.
Oh.
Thank you.
All right.
Please complete a card for us.
Who's the president of the
Does anyone else wish to be heard from the public? Come forward. Ma'am, don't forget to fill out a card, and sir, we'll need you to do some as well. The lady who just spoke, there's a card here for you. If you could fill out the card, we need that for the record. And sir, you'll need to complete a card too, but you could speak first.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Good evening. My name is Dan Pickney. I'm also a resident of Flagler Landing. And as Ms. Porter said, we are very concerned about the proximity of one of the proposed buildings to our property. And I guess I would say before it becomes a done deal sometime in the future, we would very much like the staff and the board to consider some sort of reorientation of buildings there, to perhaps put any low-rise buildings that were proposed for the site to be adjacent to our place, or a parking lot or something like that, rather than having a wall looming 30 feet from one of our buildings. The other thing I'm concerned about with is traffic impacts. Nobody has spoken about traffic impacts. To your knowledge, has the planning department or the traffic department ever done a comprehensive study of the total build-out along of North Flagler from Poinciana to the power plant? It seems as though, when hearing this discussion here, that the board is mostly concerned with the present proposal as a single entity, where the driveways are going to be and this and that, rather than taking a comprehensive look at it. At the present, I would very much like to know, in addition to whether a comprehensive plan was done for traffic impacts, what are the traffic generation rates? What did the developer have as their traffic generation rates for each of the units, and also for the commercial properties? We've heard none of that. At 1,000 units, if the trip generation rate is 2, 3, 5, whatever that is a significant impact to North Flagler Drive, which, as it is chicaned and is, in a sense, a substandard road. So I'm very much concerned with that. We have the school there. Parents line up their cars. As it is, young people from the arena come down on their scooters, and they're not watching where they're going. So I anticipate a big traffic mess as the North Flagler corridor continues to develop. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone else from the public wish to be heard on this application? And sir, when you can, please complete one of those cards we needed for the record. Yeah. Was there anyone else? Ma'am, do you wish to come forward? Don't forget, we'll need the card as well when you're done.
Yeah, I will. Hello, my name is Margot Kohlhoff. I also am a resident of 3950 Flagler Landing. I would like to yield my time back to Ms. Porter.
We can't do it that way, ma'am. These are people, no, we cannot do that. I'm so sorry.
Okay.
This is your chance to offer testimony should you wish to do it. And
yes,
our
one of
rules are
our
3
biggest
minutes
concerns,
apiece, that's all.
like Mr. Pickney just said, is the traffic flow. If you have not had the opportunity to be on that road, especially during school hours, the backup of traffic at that time of day, in the morning and at night, it is backed up from 45th Street to 36th Street, specifically from 45th Street to 39th Street, blocking an entire lane of traffic. With another 1,000 residents in the area, I understand that you have entryways for those buildings, but people still have to come down these roads to get to those buildings, and the infrastructure of those roads, I do not see how that is possible. If there was an emergency and anyone in our building or those residents along that street had to get out in a hurry, there is no possible way that we could do that. Not to mention the fact that, as Dan said, we will have, a wall literally 30 feet from our building. But the main concern, one of our main concerns, is the traffic flow for the street and for the surrounding area, because it cannot handle it now, and I do not see how it can handle it once this project is built.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And the card. Does anyone else wish to be heard on this application? And if not, we'll give the applicant a chance for a brief reply to some of the...
30,
Let me just
45
make one
minutes.
observation to the people who spoke on traffic, and we'll hear from this gentleman. Please understand the issue before us today is not approval of the project, but a change in the project. The number of units doesn't change. So for all purposes of our vote today, that's not going to be a factor, because the number of units has already been approved by the city commission. But I'll give the applicant a chance to respond.
And I'm gonna cover that broadly. Mr. Hagan is here. He's a professional engineer. He's done all the studies. In fact, I think, Chris, you did it in 2014? So he's done this for a while. When this was first approved in 2014, there was a traffic study done. It was analyzed and evaluated. Once this was approved, every subsequent traffic study that's done assumes all of this traffic on the road to evaluate what's next. We then still redid the traffic study again this time, even though there's no change, right, in the number of units and the square footage. We reevaluated the entire traffic study again for all applicable standards. It's a very difficult thing to deal with. We deal with this in a lot of projects and a lot of circumstances, right? Because when you live somewhere and you're seeing the traffic and you're thinking about what could be in a concept, frankly, it can be difficult to grasp. And there are improvements, there are things that happen. There was a roundabout that was put in. There are things that were all required from 2014 that have been updated now. It's also been reviewed by not just Mr. Hagan, it was reviewed by the city's traffic engineers, the city's mobility people. It was back in 2014, it was also reviewed by the state of Florida. So there's been a lot of traffic review in this. And so this does meet every traffic standard. You know, I've said this before, standing at literally this podium. Yes, there will be more traffic. We're not going to say it's not going to change, but it does meet all the standards, which is what we have to try to work within, and the only thing we really can work within using the professional engineers and professional standards. But again, as you said, Mr. Chairman, this is not an increase from what was there, and that was vested and accommodated, and there will be things that go with that. The only other thing that I wanted to talk about, and I'm going to ask Carlos to talk a little bit about how this design really happened and what it means. Active use and activity are not the same things, and we do understand what staff is talking about. But as John showed you, the active use doesn't create an activity along Flagler. And in fact, if you put a residential unit along Flagler, they park behind it and go in from the back. And so what we really tried to focus on was a placemaking of Flagler in that sense. And if we now take out, and we did talk about this, by the way, right? So I'm not an architect. If you want the architect to go into more detail too, he's here. But if you start taking out the tiering and you now put in a 2-story townhouse, now we have to have more parking that goes up because you lose that parking. We have to put that mechanical somewhere else. We lose that parking. And this puzzle, as I mentioned at the beginning, starts changing. And it's not so easy then to say, well, we're just going to keep everything on the waterfront the way the waterfront is, because I don't have the same space that I did, because we're moving things around so that it has to happen. And that's why when John and I both were talking, we talked about the fact that we were trying to create an inviting space along Flagler, and then that draw into the placemaking that was really utilizing the waterfront. So that was the concepts that were there for that. But Carlos, where did Carlos go? Oh, there he is. But Carlos was very involved in this, and as you know, Carlos Widera with the Huizenga Holdings, the Huizenga family, he's spent more time in this community than any of us. TK lives there, so maybe TK, if he was here, would have spent more time there. And, you know, is very invested in this community in a meaningful way, so I know this is important to him to talk about as well.
I'm so sorry? I'm giving a chance. It's still in rebuttal to what was brought up.
Hi, Carlos Vidwara, 4200 North Flagler. Yeah, we spent a lot of time listening to the community starting before 2014, engaging kind of what the future of the North End would look like. It's been almost a long time, 15 years since we really started this whole process and understanding, and we believe that we're just at the cusp of kind of a renaissance on the North End. We were encouraged to see some of the buildings that are finally showing some interest on the North End. I can't tell you how many tours I've given of Broadway and the North End to developers before COVID, none of whom would actually agree to put a shovel in the ground and kind of get started. So we have been kind of thinking up and dreaming of how do we kind of create more activity up there and kind of make the neighborhood safe. That involves a lot of things beyond just our property. It involves the schools. We spent a lot of time working with the school district. It involves the health of the community. I'm actually the chairman of the healthcare district of Palm Beach County. So there's a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes to kind of truly make a great neighborhood up in the North End, and I think that we are about there. When Anna Maria talked to us about this active use desire from the city, we share it. We believe that activity is better. The more activity, the better. However, we have to deal with the actual geometry of the site and the reality. You asked earlier a question of, is there enough customers to warrant retail space here? We have one very unique opportunity here in the marina because we have about 1,000 crew members that are living on site. So we actually have enough to create retail activity and foster commercial activity on site without the need to attract a lot of traffic. When I talk to the residents, their big concern is like, okay, if you put retail here, it's great. We go there and get a smoothie or get a frozen yogurt or whatever it may be. But then I got to deal with all the traffic that's going up and down that these customers are trying to attract. We have enough business from the crew to subsidize all of these businesses. So we have a unique opportunity to have thriving businesses without having to attract a lot of customers from outside of the area. And that's exactly what we've been trying to do. And that's why a month ago, you guys heard our plan for the GL homes that are going across the way. So about 70% of the lots directly across the street are going to be rebuilt as part of this, and they'll be walking over into this area. And so the key part was that if you were to put also commercial activity on the Flagler side, then you would have to create either more parking or you'd lose that space and you'd go up one level. And without question, the biggest concern that everybody has is not to have these looming parking garages over Flagler. And that's why we stepped it back, which also made us lose parking. So we can just make the jigsaw puzzle work, but you start to tinker with it and change a lot of things, we cannot get the ultimate objective, which is to create the center, the heartbeat of the North End, and something that's gonna spur redevelopment, not only on the east side of Broadway, but on the west side of Broadway as well, and benefit the neighborhoods to the north and the neighborhoods to the south. So thank you.
All right, let's bring it back to the board. Rather than me arbitrarily calling people, I'd like to hear from everyone on this application. Anyone wish to speak first? Go ahead, Patrick.
Thank you. I guess, I'll start off by saying this is a tremendously important project for the city. It's absolutely stunning and beautiful what we've seen presented here tonight, and I applaud their efforts. I do have concerns, and I think I share the concerns. There was seemingly a recent lack of communication with the neighbor to the south. I think in addition to that, I think the height that's being reallocated specifically to that adjacency is potentially concerning. The overall height changes, I don't really see an issue with. In fact, I would potentially even suggest pushing for greater height on the primary building that's put more out into the water. Perhaps a reallocation of that perimeter height to the center could be a more viable opportunity here, potentially a more lucrative opportunity. And, the concept of this active use, there's been a lot of conversation about that recently with a lot of these applications. It kind of comes down to the same concept. I completely buy into the concept of putting all of the retail focused on the promenade because that's the only place people want to be. But active use does not necessarily have to portend activity. Again, we're looking at the concept of just building a wall on one frontage, an impenetrable wall, and putting everything else on the other side. I think it would be an incredible opportunity to integrate, a number of residential units on the ground level in some of those areas that could occupy some of that terracing. That could be, just from an architectural standpoint, very interesting. The components of the fire and MEP that are on that ground level currently could be pushed down into a basement immediately below that footprint. I know it's a lot more complex than the way I'm describing it, but I think there's an opportunity there to at least engage the city's request.
Thank you. Who would like to go next?
Aldo. I support the city's effort in trying to introduce commercial and retail uses along streets to activate the streets, but I think in this particular site, I have the dilemma that we already have that already covered in the promenade. It's an inward-looking design, and it's a very unique site. There's no other. It's a marina. And I think in this situation, I would tend to support the plan proposed by the applicant. When it comes to building heights, I don't have an issue with building heights. Adding 3 floors to a 30-plus story building, people will probably not even notice it. Adding 4 stories to a 2-story building, yes, very visible. But considering the fact that it's furthest away from Flagler, it won't be a scene because of the landscaping, I really don't have any issues with building height.
Thank you. Does anyone else wish to be heard on this application? Not required, just give one an opportunity.
So I agree with a lot of what Patrick had said. But for me, you know, I came from Edgewater, New Jersey, and we had a lot of development along the waterfront that negated residents from being able to access the waterfront, which was the most beautiful part of the city. You're right on the Hudson River facing Manhattan. And the only people that got to enjoy that were the people that could afford to buy those houses and condos. And so the idea that you're going to activate the promenade, that you're going to make it retail, that you're going to make it walkability, that you're going to allow residents of the community and non-residents of the community to access that waterfront and enjoy it, I think offsets a lot of the flaws would be the wrong word, but yeah, a lot of the flaws of the plan. Like Patrick, I do agree. I think I had even said it to Brian of more of like a TP approach, where the center building was a little higher and the 2 buildings next to it were higher, and then the buildings on the end be a little bit lower. But you know, if that was something that would consider, because it would give and they, you know, had said on the call that they prefer this sort of stair-step approach. So I'm not a developer. I don't know what the right answer is. But overall, I think the application does what we would want it to do. And they were previously approved for 1,059 units. They're not changing that. And so we wind up with a better project. And in reality, a lot of the development that is coming to Flagler and has already broken ground, they broke ground because they planted the flag and said we were going to do this. Now, granted, it took them 11 years to get here, but it's a very thoughtful design that incorporates resident and non-resident uses, and I think it's great.
Anyone else wish to be heard?
So I definitely, you know, commend the applicant for really putting something together that I think is a beautiful project. You know, certainly visually beautiful, and certainly the way that it's integrating the commercial uses along with the residential uses. I can imagine, you know, 11 years ago when the project was first envisioned and approved, I don't think anyone could imagine that it could look the way that it does today, and certainly have the economic impact that this could have today. So I think that, you know, understanding that things change and certainly trends change, something as simple as the car share becoming such a, you know, important part of the way people, you know, transport around now, and it eliminates the need to have as much driving areas and has much more availability for pedestrian traffic, I think is something that is only afforded to this project because the trend changed from driving to having other ways of transportation. And I imagine that the 1,000 units probably won't, you know, they don't all go up at one time. It does take a long period of time. So I do feel that there's a thoughtful approach here, and I imagine that in the future, a thoughtful approach to how to finish the project, you know, in the years to come with the city, with staff, to be able to, you know, modify as things do change, because projects like this are only coming to our city because of what we have to offer, because it's such a great city and it is becoming more livable. And I hope we can continue to make this a place that people want to come and develop projects like this, because I think this is a huge amenity for everybody and certainly good, for the economic future of the city.
Any other comments? So I'd like to add mine then.
I do.
Go ahead, Gene, you go first.
I don't have a problem with the building height. I think because it's offset, it doesn't interfere too much with the city's skyline. I do have a question. Maybe this is more for council, but are site visits permitted so long as they're disclosed, or site visits not permitted whatsoever?
I'll let Mr. Thomas respond.
You can do site visits, but you should disclose it prior to decision.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay. I want to add my own comments.
May I say
These are
something?
really tall buildings.
Steve, let me say something. Okay, so I like the
Go ahead,
project.
Gene. Okay.
I like the design. I like the fact that the developer has put in so much time and effort and research to create such a unique design. I like the intersection of the commercial and the residence. I do have a slight concern when I heard the comment about the residents not being heard, and I don't know if it's time for that, where the developers can talk to the residents, but I think it's always needed when you're going into a project of this magnitude. The height doesn't concern me, but I do like the fact that there will be community access to the promenade. I think to have a project and there's isolation or residents left out, doesn't fare well, but I think it's unique. It stands out quite a bit. And the other minor concern was the close proximity to the condominium project. I think they said 30 feet. But other than that, I think it's a great project.
Thank you. I just wanted to comment, I think these are really tall buildings. I would love to tell you in good conscience that 399 feet isn't a problem, but 450 is. So I don't see much difference between the houses, so I can live with that. I'm just trying to say it's not like it's a two-story building and now it's going to be 450 feet. So once they're really tall, as you pointed out, they're really tall. And then the question is, are the trade-offs worth it? And I think you make a compelling case it is for what's being done in the inside. That's unique, that's special, and I think that should be supported. I take the same issue that Patrick does. I think the active use does not mean necessarily commercial. It's the experience of going along that walk. I just wish the applicant, because so many talented, imaginative people, it seems more can be done to address the city's, I think, very legitimate concern on that. So with that reservation, otherwise I'd be supportive of this. I think I mirror pretty closely your comments, Patrick, and your concerns. Really tall, but for what we're giving up on height, I think we gain enough to make that a worthwhile trade-off. Those are my thoughts. Anyone else have any thoughts? If not, I'll be looking for a motion.
The only thing that I might mention regarding the neighborhood communication, does the board feel that the communication is in regards to the project as it was approved in 2014, or is the communication regarding the proposed amendment to what was already approved?
It's a great question, Gene, because these are going to be really tall buildings next to this development that have already been approved. What we're voting on is a relatively modest change to that. So the fundamental concerns that the neighbors have pre-exist what we're doing here tonight. Because if we voted this down, they're still going to have a really tall building next to them. They're still going to have the same traffic issues from the same number of units that's already been approved by the City Commission. So nothing we vote on today will change that. So I don't know if that answered your question. Okay.
But the communication is key due to the 11-year.
But his question was, is the lack of communication about what we're doing here specifically now, or is it a larger, longer-term problem? And I'm suggesting it's a larger, longer-term problem.
Because the communication should have happened in 2015,
Before
if that's the
these
case.
large buildings were approved.
Right.
And these
Right.
number of units were approved. Okay, I'm looking for a motion. Anyone wish to make one?
All right. Everybody took one step backwards. I move that the planning board grant planning board case number 1445BB, a request by John Roth of Gunster on behalf of Huizenga Holdings for the development of permissible building areas, BBAs number 4, number 8, number 9, and number 10, within the Marina CMPD for the construction of 259 multifamily dwelling units, residential amenity, guest suites, private, semi-private club, office, crew amenities, retail, and marina storage, with variances from the city zoning and land development regulation. This motion is based upon the testimony presented at the hearing, along with the application submitted and the staff report, which constitutes competent substantial evidence. The planning board hereby makes finding of fact that the application complies with all of the applicable review standards found in sections 94-35C and 94-38D and C of the City of West Palm Beach zoning and land development regulations. In addition, the granting of this level 3 special review is subject to the conditions of approval contained in a staff report dated September 16th, 2025. I move that these conditions are necessary to ensure compliance with the purposes and intent of the zoning and land development regulations and consistent with the comprehensive plan of the City of West Palm Beach.
Okay, we have a motion. Do you wish to comment
So
on that?
are you,
Yeah, the
Yeah,
condition I'm
the-
adding on the second motion?
To be amended, as presented in the staff report, include the limitation of the 399 and the active uses. So you have to amend those.
So sorry, you have to speak in the microphone. We can't hear you.
The conditions need to be amended, as is not as presented in the staff report. You have to amend condition number 1 and 2, or remove condition number 1 and 2, because you are approving as presented.
Peter, are you making a motion to approve as presented by the applicant without changes, or are you making a motion to modify with the exceptions that the city has suggested?
So what the applicant presented
Yeah,
is different from what the staff wants.
correct, because there's two of them, but what about the second page? There's another motion here coming.
I think the motion you want to read
Oh,
for 8A.
yeah,
And it looks like you're reading B.
I'm reading B.
Oh. Oh, I
So you want me to do AA?
Yeah, we need to.
Now you're telling me it's a shorter paragraph.
Okay.
For clarity, I think and I apologize, Mr. Mans, may I?
Yes.
Okay. AA is the master plan, which then the site plan follows, which is what I think Sam was saying. We agree with that. I think, Mr. Pivko, it would be the approval with, the conditions, by the way, we need to sort of work on the other conditions anyway, just in drafting with the staff. So we'll have to work through those, but it would be the approval with the conditions, except the height and active use conditions.
Yeah.
If that's what you meant.
I was going to do that with the other one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anna agreed. Oh, okay.
All
I'm
right.
sitting down now.
I move that the planning board recommend to the city commission approval, planning board case number 1445AA, a request by John Roach of Gunster on behalf of Huizenga Holdings for a major amendment to the Marina Commercial Marine Plan Development, CMPD, to modify the design guidelines. The motion is based upon the testimony presented at the hearing, along with the application submitted and the staff report, which constitutes competent substantial evidence. The planning board hereby makes findings of the fact that the application complies with the required standards of sections 94-32 of the City of West Palm Beach and land development regulations. In addition, the recommendation is made subject to approval of only 2 conditions contained in the staff report dated September 16th, 2025, and those are conditions number 1 and 3. I move that these conditions are necessary to ensure compliance with the purpose and intent of the zoning land development regulations and consistent with the comprehensive plan of the City of West Palm Beach. Here we go.
I'm sorry, Mr. Pipko. The motion needs to remove condition number 1 and 2. If you are approving as presented by staff, just remove condition 1 and 2 that are the one pertinent to. Yes,
That-
the
you
height
can-
and the
I can't
active
hear.
uses.
What'd you say?
She's saying, your motion should be that you want to remove condition 1 and 2.
And 2.
What you said?
Yes.
1 and 2.
Remove?
You wanna
Remove them.
Those are ones that say they don't want the height, if you do, and 2 is active use.
Well,
So you-
two is active use and 4 is height.
Is it 2
No,
and
but-
4, or is it 1 and 2?
Yeah,
Yes, don't pay attention to this slide, I'm sorry.
that's right, so we've removed them.
They're telling you. What you want is, you want to remove conditions 1 and 2.
Okay,
Do you have a
so
motion?
do it, not 1 and 2.
That's, the conditions 1 and 2.
I don't want to remove 2.
This one?
Conditions.
Oh, so you have a motion. In here either.
We have a motion to
Keep all the others.
condition.
Oh, okay, but it's different than what we had here, that's
Go
probably
ahead,
why.
and now that you.
So,
All right.
Mr. Pipko, these are the
Version
recommended-
number 14-1.
He's got it. He's removing 1 and 2.
Yes.
We are removing item 1, which deals with the maximum height permitted with a CMPD, which remains at 399 feet, and removing commercial uses, residential uses, or amenity uses for residents shall be provided along Flagler Drive frontage using 40 to 42nd, at least for the first 2 stories.
All right, we have a motion. Have we a second? Okay. Discussion.
So does this mean that we are voting for staff to table those 2 items and they're going to work something different out?
No, and in fact, I was hoping you might suggest an amendment to the motion, because as written now, it will be exactly what the applicant is requesting, and there'd be no obligation to do anything further for active use or the height. I think the height, there seems to be consensus for to allow. The question is, let me ask you this, if you were to suggest an amendment, what would it be to his motion?
I would suggest an amendment that, at least on the condition of the active use, that staff come up with an amicable solution regarding the Flagler Drive frontage.
If you're open to that, I can support the motion. I don't know, how do you all feel before we
I
ask
have a
them to do it?
procedural question, because I would vote against that motion. And then do we introduce a new motion that would
You won't have to,
remove that?
the pending motion, the way he just did it, is what you like, right? You don't want any.
Yes,
Okay.
correct.
So, no, procedurally, yet we're still seeing, so you're getting a few, actually, I think
So we have
it's
to
very
vote on
helpful.
the acceptance of the amendment
See if there's
first.
if there's a
I got you.
a majority for that change.
I got you.
Gene, what are your thoughts on this?
I'm okay with it as presented by the applicant.
Okay? As it presented, and Sam?
I agree. I like the project as it's been presented.
Okay, so we have a motion, we have a second. Let's call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? I'm going to oppose with an asterisk. I support this project. I do agree with Patrick's suggestion that, again, not simply that staff and you continue your discussions with respect to the active use. So without that directive, I can't support this motion.
And I would oppose it for the same reason.
So it's going to pass 5-2 then. But you, just for the record, so that he can truthfully say to the city staff that we otherwise support this project. Is that your view as well, Patrick?
100%, yes.
All right, thank you. Oh, the second motion. Okay, sorry. It took us so long to get the first one done. Want to try again? Giving up on BB? Anyone want to offer the motion?
I move that the planning board grant planning board case 14455BB, a request by John Roach of Gunster on behalf of Huizinga Holding, Inc., for the development of permissible building areas, PBAs number 4, 8, 9, and 10, within the Marina CMPD for the construction of 259 multifamily dwelling units, resident amenity, guest suites, private, semi-private club, office, crew amenities, retail, and marina storage with variances from the city zoning and land development regulations. This motion is based upon the testimony presented at the hearing, along with the application submitted in the staff report, which constitute competent substantial evidence. The planning board hereby makes finding of fact that the applicant complies with each of the applicable special review standards found in section 94-35C and 94-38D6 of the City of West Palm Beach Planning and Zoning development regulations.
Okay.
For clarity, condition 1 sub I is the height limitation, so that would need to be removed if you don't want the site plan to then have the height limitation. So for just that piece would
We
be
appreciate
changed.
that technical advice.
All right. In addition, granting this level 3 special use is subject to the conditions of approval contained in the staff report dated September 16, 2025, with the further condition that condition numbers 1.I are removed or modified to read as follows. They are removed. I move that these conditions as modified are necessary to ensure compliance with the purpose and intent of the zoning and land development regulations and consistency with the comprehensive plan of the city of West Palm Beach. Is that it?
Okay, we have a motion. Have we a second?
Second.
Motion and second. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you. All right. Thank you all very much. Thank you. Okay, we're going to move ahead, though, if that's all right, Peter, because we have, let's see here. We have 1, 2, 3 code revision cases, but one of them, 2510, it's been requested that that be postponed to the next meeting. Can I have a motion to
Motion to postpone 2510.
2510 until our next planning board meeting? A motion, have we a second?
Second.
Motion and second. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously. That brings us into code revision case 2509.
Good evening. Let me just make sure that I have my presentation up. Good evening, Claudio Aben, City Urban Designer. I have here in front of you a code revision case number 2509. This is a city-initiated request for a text amendment to the Downtown Master Plan Housing Incentive Program. This is under the Article 4th of the Downtown Master Plan Urban Regulations. A little bit of background about the Downtown Housing Program. This was adopted by the city in June of 2021. It was a collaboration between the Planning Division and also Housing, oh, I touched that, sorry, and the Housing and Community Development Department. Since the adoption, the city has received 4 different projects that have participated in the housing program, and as of right now, all of them were actual rental projects, and right now, in collaboration with the same city staff, we are proposing additional revisions that are related to for-sale projects and also making that distinction between rental and for-sale projects. And also the area medium income structure, we are making some changes on that, affordability period, among other things that I will go through that. A very quick overview about our housing program in the downtown. This is for any site or some sites in the downtown where they can actually buy or transfer development rights from other properties so they can go higher and they can also increase their development capacity. For some of those that are proposing residential uses, they will also have to comply with the housing program, which would mean that from that additional capacity, they will have to set aside certain square footage of it, and they have to be restricted to certain area medium incomes. The options that they have as a developer to participate in the housing program is to construct those restricted units on site. They can construct it off-site in a different site in the downtown or nearby the downtown, or they can actually make a contribution to the Housing Trust Fund. We also have an implementation guide that it was approved by City Commission, and that provides a lot of more information on how this gets implemented, and is actually a good source for the developers to really know how this works. The proposed amendments that we are presenting in front of you are, one of them is related to the payment in lieu option for sale residential projects. The city actually received the first condo development in the Nora district. This is again for sale, and we are trying to really create those regulations that will apply to this particular project. and other projects that will be for sale. So this amendment will establish a formula to calculate that payment in lieu fee that the developer will actually have to pay because they are choosing to not put them on site or construct an offsite. They're actually choosing to do that payment in lieu, meaning that contribution to the Housing Trust Fund. This fee will basically reflect the difference between the average market rate home price and the affordable purchase price applicable to the MII levels of each unit. I have here this slide that gives you a little bit more information about how the market rate home prices will be established that is related to certain already price numbers that are established by Florida programs and also the affordable purchase price. And obviously there will be some other standards, measures, and numbers that will be used for this calculation, which will be assuming the 30-year fixed rate mortgage, an interest of 6.5, property taxes at 1.6, factoring a 50% homestead exemption, and the insurance that will be projected at 1.5%. And then this is a little more details of how this affordable purchase price will be calculated, and this market rate home price will be calculated. And again, the payment in lieu fee will be the difference between those two things. The other changes that we're making is for this payment in lieu option to only be available for developments with for sale units. We have seen most of the development coming into downtown is for rental, so we want restricted units to be constructed on rental, which means that the developer will only have to choose for building in on-site, the same development, and also off-site, which will be areas in the downtown, master plan area, or nearby the downtown. Another change that we are proposing is updating the MIS structure for restricted units. Currently, the program promotes the construction of housing for families with incomes between 60 and 100% of the area median income within the downtown area. Here I can show you from the Department of Housing and Urban Development the income limits and rent limits for the year of 2025 and highlighting those MIA levels that we're talking about. For a household, for example, of 1 or 2, you can see at 60%, they are earning around almost 50 to 55,000. Or if you go to 120%, you will see the respected income limits. So one of the changes that we are actually making is, right now, again, the current existing program is from 60 to 100, so we are increasing it to 120%. The reason for that is that we know that there is this significant gap of housing opportunities for the moderate income families in the downtown market, housing market, who earn between the 80 and the 120% MAI. So by making this change, we will be expanding the eligibility for this type of homeowners, home renters or homeowners. So if you can see here on the box, if you can say, we are making that distinction for rental projects and we are making that distinction for sale projects. On the section that we are changing, we're making that clarification for the projects that are for sale and for the projects that are for rental in all of these different areas and regulations for the DMT housing program. Another change that we're creating is extending the affordability period from 20 years to 30 years. Again, this will be better for anyone that is actually occupying these restricted units that will be there for a longer time. And other revisions are related to the acceptable location for off-site restricted units. Again, we're making that clarification between for sale projects and for rental projects. For rental projects will be in the same areas, which will be in the downtown master plan, and some areas nearby or to the south, as you can see here on the maps, and to the north, really close by to the downtown. And for sale projects, we want to give a little more flexibility because we understand that the downtown land is actually pretty expensive. So we want to make sure that these are actually going to be constructed anywhere in the city, which is, again, needed. It's a necessity in the city. This attachment that you see on the screen is basically the attachment that was provided to you in the staff report prior to this meeting. This actually shows all the underlying this shows the section of the DMP that will be amended. You will see underline the text that is added and strike through the text that will be deleted. Staff recommends approval for code revision case number 2509 based upon the finding that the proposed amendment complies with all the amendment standards found in section 9432A of the zoning and land development regulations. These amendments provide clarifications on requirements for developments with for sale units, expand the AMIA labels and affordability period, and also revise existing regulations to ensure that housing affordability is more accessible for residents in the city. This also was presented to the Downtown Action Committee on September 10 and was recommended approval with a final vote of 6-0. And I'm here if you have any questions.
Okay, any questions of staff?
I have a question. Yeah, I'm not surprised that staff recommends approval, but you said that there was a current applicant that is going to offer for sale units. Okay, how does this affect them, and then have they been given notice of the changes and how it will either adversely or?
Yeah, so it is in review. That application was just submitted, and yes, we have had conversations with them about creating this formula that will be calculated based on what we presented right here.
And what kind of feedback did you get?
It is good feedback. We don't see them here opposing to it, so I think it's great. And they know that it was going to be here for approval.
Okay. And I would assume, of course, they were given notice because it's public notice,
Yes.
so got it. Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions, Peter?
I know in the past, there was a great deal of pressure of not exceeding 20-year contracts. How successful are you going to be now that you're looking at 30-year contracts?
And the pressure was coming from?
The developer industry.
I see. My understanding is that the 30-year affordability period is actually a standard in the state, and I don't know if we have here housing staff that would like to share more about it. And we know that in some cases, developers opt to continue to have those restricted units for an even longer time.
Any other questions of staff? You know, you need to stay until we're done. I promise we'll be brief. No, any other questions of you?
I just, the calculation of the fee structure always struck me as complicated, considering the parties that would be involved in determining the numbers. I mean, I guess who came up with that model? How does it, there's a lot of things that obviously go into saying something is a market value or market this or market that. So was there at least the communication with other parties, whether it's developers or whether it's other cities in terms of how they deal with the affordable housing issues? And I mean, it looks complicated for me, and I can only imagine in practice would be impossible to agree on it.
It's too complicated, you can't afford it.
Well, that's the whole point.
Good
You can't afford
evening.
it.
For the record, I'm Kimberly Spence, the interim housing director here at the city. The fee structure may look complicated, but in our department, we would be the one calculating the amount annually, and it would go into the city's fee schedule. Basically, this is our standard approach to home ownership. The city has an existing home ownership programs where we assist low and moderate income persons. This change would actually allow us to assist people above the 80% AMI, which is typically what our funding sources allow now through the federal government or through the state. But basically, the formula is looking at the average market price in the city, and we're looking at it from the state level and HUD programs, and we came up with an average of that. And the way we determined, we tested a few different formulas to get to this state, and we did communicate that with the developer of Nora as well. But the way we determined that we would do the average of those two values is we looked at the average sales price for 2024 through the property appraiser, which was about $500,000. And taking the state figure, it was higher than $500,000. Taking the figure from the federal government, it was lower, and the average basically mirrored or came close to the actual average for the property appraiser. We wanted to make sure we had values that were reliable and that would be available annually, that we could always calculate the amount for these projects going forward. And every other factor in the formula is basically standard for the homeownership industry. So.
You know, the advantage of this type of formula is it's constantly making adjustments, so it'll never get outdated. You know, as market conditions change, it changes with it.
Well, I mean, I guess, just so I understand, so if somebody wants to build a project and there is a requirement for affordable housing to build within the project, but they elect not to, and it's too expensive to build it off-site into another location for all sorts of other market reasons, they can elect to pay a fee, and the fee would be the difference between some market average of housing across the country and housing in Florida and what the average person could afford at the time. Is that?
It would be the difference between the average market price and what we calculate that persons at certain income levels, the income categories that we're talking about, 80%, 100%, 120% can afford based on some standard measures for homeownership affordability. That difference is considered the gap or the subsidy that would be needed by the home buyer to be able to afford to purchase a home within the city.
Okay, so then if, I mean, just hypothetically, you have, it's $10 or whatever the number is. If it doesn't prove that any developer or anyone building a project would elect to pay that because it's too much, they feel like it's too much, is there room for negotiation? Or I'm just, you know, to impose a fee on something that might be tied to numbers you can figure out, but if everybody who's building housing says it's, you know, that's too much, I'm not going to pay it, we're just not going to do the project, then what's the point of having a fee-based system like that? Am I explaining it right? I mean, I don't know.
Well, they could go for the lower density. It's only that they're opting to go for higher density by paying for workforce housing in lieu of actually building it. So if the property is approved for 250 units, but if you do workforce housing, you can do 300 units, then they do a financial calculation that says it's worth it for me to pay the fee or it's not.
So, but if it's a fee that no one will elect to pay, then there'll be no affordable housing built, or they'll just say, fine, we won't build at all, or we'll build what we can build by right, and then there's no
But in a way,
housing.
it works the same way for rentals as well. You can make that same argument, right? The cap rate's not there, so I just won't build affordable, and I'll do my 250 units.
Anna Marie wants to be heard on this. Go ahead.
Well, just to answer your question, there's two things. Like, the current program has already established a payment in lieu fee that was calculated based on the cost of construction, plus additional 30% for land value. When we did that calculation in 2021, the intention was the fee was so extremely expensive that the developer will not opt that, and they will opt the option to build the units on-site or off-site. At the time, the numbers that were run for the calculation of how many units, at what percentages, all was basically target to the rental project. And that's what we have been implementing until now. So the reason why we're doing this amendment is because now we have a for sale product that approach the city and say, I want to use this, I need to use TDR, so I will be subject of this requirement for affordable housing. But they were building a for sale product. For a for sale product, we all recognize the option to put the units on site is very unlikely. They are building a high-end product. So we basically sat down and discussed with the developer what will be the option for the buyout for a for sale product. And that's part of that negotiation back and forth between what they thought could be a reasonable number for a for sale product and what we thought would be a reasonable number to provide a subsidy to a buyout product, like a person that is a family that's gonna buy the unit. That was the negotiation, and that's what we arrived to these numbers.
Got it, okay.
Are there any other questions of staff? And if not, I'll look for a motion.
Motion.
We have a motion.
Okay.
You
I move
have
that
a motion.
I move that the planning board
There we go.
recommends approval for code revision case number 25-09. This motion is based upon the factual testimony presented, the staff report, and the findings that the proposed amendment complies with all the amendment standards found in section 94-32 of the zoning and land development regulations.
Okay, we have a motion. Have we a second?
Second.
Motion and second. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you. Next, our last item on the agenda is code revision case number 2507. Jermaine, they tell me you're very efficient. Is that true?
Oh, yes, definitely.
I didn't ask for a public comment. I took
All right, so Jermaine Swaby again for the record. I'll be presenting code revision case number 25-07, which is for the subdivision regulations. So the city initiated request is to amend and add subdivision regulations for section 94-342, general design standards, section 94-343, minimum street paving and specifications, and section 94-611 for the definitions. And section 94-341 and 94-344 will be removed. So the proposed changes allows for regulations to be consistent with the state statutes. And the text amendment is detailed in the report. And the image here is just provided to show an example of a recent subdivision, which was the GL Homes, which now has new platted lines. And with that, staff is recommending approval of the code revision case number 25-07, based on the findings that the text amendment meets all 8 amendment standards found in section 9432 of the zoning and land development regulations. That concludes.
Jermaine, so we're doing this because it's to bring our laws in compliance with new state laws and regulations?
Yes, that's correct. So it's just
All right.
technicals. Yeah.
Understood. Any questions of staff? If not, I'm looking for a motion.
Well, what's the significance of the diagram?
It's just to give an example of a platted
So it's
lot.
basically, it said like the streets have to continue contiguously, they can't dead end.
I mean, just generally, it's so this was a GL Homes that was previously approved. It's just showing that you know, its platted lines is based on, you know, whatever specifications in the code and what is allowed. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Any other questions of staff? And if not, I'm looking for a motion. Ooh, I'm so sorry. Oh.
I'll make a
I'm
motion.
looking.
Do you want me to make a motion?
Please. Unless you want to stay here all night, one of the two.
I move that the planning board recommend to the city commission approval of code revision case number 2507, a city-initiated text amendment to chapter 94, zoning and land development regulations, article 11, section 94-341, intent, conflicting regulations and scope, section 94-342, general design standards, sections 94-343, minimum street paving and specifications in section 94-344, requirements for unplatted subdivisions to amend, remove, and add regulations, and article, I don't know that one, XIX, what is that 2019? 19 definitions, section 94-611 definitions, removing and modifying definitions. The motion is based upon the testimony presented at the hearing, along with the application submitted and the staff report, which constitute competent substantial evidence. The planning board hereby makes findings of fact that the application complies with the required standards in section 94-32A of the City of West Palm Beach zoning and land development regulations.
Okay, we have a motion. Have we a second?
Second.
Motion and second. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. That then brings us to other business, unfinished business, new business. Hearing none, we stand adjourned. Thank you all.